Thank you, everyone, and good afternoon, and thank you for taking time to listen to me talk about Greenvale's 3 high-grade and high-value projects. Usual disclaimer. I'll just start off with a corporate summary. We have 433 million shares on issue. Our market cap at the moment is 47.6 million. Share price is around 11 cents. Cash and liquid assets at the moment is 5.9 million. And 44% are made up of our top 25 shareholders. Our non-executive chairman is Neil Bill, who you all probably all know from being one of the founding directors of Pilbara Minerals. There's myself, with over 25 years of oil and gas and energy experience. Then our final board member is Elias Carew. And then we have Vince Fayard and Kurt Laney, who are joint COSEX CFOs. So we've got 3 unique projects in Greenvale. Our flagship project is the Alpha Torbanite project with its very rare oil shales, torbanite and canalite. That will enable us to be Australia's only end-to-end producer of bitumen binding products. Then in the Northern Territory, we now have our new 3-way play of high-grade helium, hydrogen and natural gas. And then our third project is in Central Queensland as well, which is our geothermal projects, which enable us to produce 24/7 base load renewable power. I'll start off with the Alpha Torbanite project. So the Alpha Torbanite project is located around 60 kilometres outside of the township of Alpha, which is about a 2-hour drive from Emerald in Central Queensland. We're very fortunate to only have the only commercial reserve of torbanite in Australia, if not globally. There is some torbanite in Tasmania, but it's not in the scale that makes it commercial. With the torbanite and the canalite, they're both oil shales. So with the oil shales, once you heat them up, they become a heavy crude oil and they can tell asphaltenes. Those asphaltenes is what makes the bitumen products. We are looking at making the project carbon neutral. To do that, we're going to be offsetting against our geothermal projects. I would like to emphasise they are 2 uniquely different projects, but it does enable us to be carbon neutral. And again, this will help Australia be less dependent on exports overseas within the bitumen industry. So recently, we've just upgraded our inferred mineral resource estimate to 28 million tonnes from 18.6 million tonnes. That's an increase of 51%, so we can all agree that's a quite significant increase. That equates to 27.7 million barrels of oil equivalent. That's using modified Fisher assay though. Once we apply our testing programs, we're expecting to see significant uplift in that and an increase. With oil shales, the conventional way of processing them is pyrolysis, but that is very carbon intensive. So we looked at an alternative that's going to be a lot more environmentally friendly. So we use liquefaction. Liquefaction has been used before in the coal industry. We've now completed 3 test programs. Test program 1 was just to basically see if liquefaction would work. We saw those results. And then we increased the temperature and the pressure in test program 2, and we saw a 51% increase. Then when we went from test program 2 to 3, again increased in the temperature and pressure, we saw a 72% increase. Liquefaction is quite a simple process. You use a power reactor, and you add in your product, you add a carrier oil, you use hydrogen as pressure, you blend it over a period of time, you reach your desired temperature, and then you wait for it to cool down, separate your carrier oil, and you're left with your product. We've now entered into our final stage of testing, which is test program 4, where we've engaged the University of Monash and Licella, which is all being headed up by our main consultants, Procom. And our aim is to get our mineral resource estimate and upgraded to indicated, and then we'll have our pre-feasibility study out Q1 2024. With test program 4, it's being headed up by Procom, who are probably one of Australia's leading oil shale experts. We've engaged the highly prestigious Monash University here in Melbourne, who are looking at using a carrier oil and supercritical water. In test program 3, 2 and 1, we've been using outcropper samples. Monash are now using the core samples. So we're expecting to see significantly different results, more positive, hopefully. And then we've got Licella, who are based in New South Wales, who are concentrating on supercritical water. Supercritical water, one of the reasons we're having a look at this is because, again, it's a bit more environmentally friendly. It's less process intensive, so the capital costs will be reduced as well. Licella have finished their first round of testing, and those results now are in Petrolab in Melbourne, and we'll hopefully releasing them to the market shortly. Monash are in full flow. They've completed around 4 of their 16 samples, what they're doing at the moment. So things are progressing really well. So the bitumen industry in Australia, as mentioned before, and most of it is all imported from overseas. It comes from China, Thailand, Singapore. It comes in big, heavy oil tankers, heated up at 240 degrees. What that means, it's not very environmentally friendly. It means Australia is very dependent on the overseas market. What we are seeing as well is year-on-year increase for the demand for bitumen. The federal government, when they recently announced they're going to spend $9 billion on road and infrastructure projects, and the majority of that is in the road space. And in Queensland, we've got the 2032 Olympics coming up. So again, we expect to see a lot more expenditure in infrastructure. So again, we expect to see the demand. Each month, the Queensland government and each government announced what their bitumen binding prices are. So for C170, what we're seeing is year-on-year growth, around 21% increase in cost. So it's around $1,500 a tonne at the moment. So it's a high-value product. Now I'd like to talk about our West Walker project, which is based in the Northern Territory in the Amadeus Basin. Greenvale have entered into agreement with Mosman Oil and Gas for a farming agreement to acquire 75% of EP145. To acquire that, we are going to pay for the 2D seismic, and also we'll pay for the first drill as well. The Amadeus Basin is a proven basin. There's a lot of projects already out there, a lot of infrastructure already in place, and what we're seeing is some of the highest concentrations of helium globally. So already some of the wells that have been drilled in Mount Kitty and Magai gave some fantastic results. So Mount Kitty gave back 9% helium and around 11% hydrogen, and Magai came back with 6% helium, and they didn't test for hydrogen. Only it's just recently that people have been testing for helium because no one really knew about it, and the same with hydrogen. So there's been wells drilled out there, but no one's really looked at it. On our tenement EP145, there was a well previously drilled that's been abandoned, and it was only a shallow drill, but they also found traces of helium as well, which is really good for us. To give you an idea of context of the helium, what's good and what's bad, America, who are probably one of the biggest producers of helium, anything above 0.3% is considered commercial. Most helium projects are usually around 1-2%. So when you see numbers like 9%, you can see why we're excited and how big those numbers actually are. So Mosman Oil and Gas reported a prospective resource estimate for EP145 back in October 2022. That best estimate gave 440 billion cubic feet of gases, which is also made up of 26.4 BCF of helium and 26.4 BCF of hydrogen as well. So you can see that's a lot of money and a lot of high value there. At the south of us there, you can see the Mount Kitty, and you can see Magee there on the right-hand side as well. So with West Walker project, as mentioned previous, we'll be doing the 2D seismic. We've just commenced the approval pathway for that now. We anticipate that we'll get those approvals early next year, and then we'll be going out, which will take us about 3 to 4 months in the field to actually do the 2D seismic work. And then we'll have those results, And with those results, what that does, it enables us to identify the best place to drill in the basin. What we want to make sure is that we drill in the most shallow place that gives us the results for all three commodities that we're chasing. Once we've got those, we've identified that sweet spot, we'll go through the approval pathway, and then we'll look at drilling as soon as we can. So, the helium market. At the moment, if you want to enter into a long-term contract in the helium space, you're looking at US 450 SCOFs. SCOFs is 1,000 cubic feet. What you can see from that graph, in the last few years, there's been a significant jump. The reason for that is in the Ukraine, one of their major producers shut down because of the war, and in America, one of the major plants is shut down in America. So that means the supply for helium has been reduced by 25%. Now, why are we seeing the supply come down? What we're seeing is the demand go up. So we're seeing there that the demand year on year is increasing by around 11%. At the moment, the world's demand is around 6 BCF, and by 2030, we're expecting that to go up to around 10 BCF. When people think helium, a lot of people think helium balloons, and I did myself when we first started looking at it, but it's used in many things. So MRI machines use around 700 litres of helium a year. It's used in semiconductors, it's used in welding, fibre opticals, aerospace, in a number of industries. And each one of those industries, the demand for it is going up year on year. So as we said, as I want to emphasise before, the supply is coming down, but the demand's going up. So it's a great market to be in at the moment. Helium itself cannot be manufactured. So with hydrogen, you can produce hydrogen and you can make it using electrolyzers, waters, and a power source. With helium, you can't do that. It's just natural. So this has to occur, and it usually occurs in a decaying basin around the world. And then what it also has to be in a basin where it can't leak. Because it's such a light gas, it will escape. So that's why the Amadeus Basin is perfect for helium. Natural hydrogen, which is gold hydrogen. The reason it's gold is because it's natural, you don't use any source to produce it. If you want to produce green hydrogen, you have to use a renewable energy source, wind farms, solar, and again, they don't run for 24 hours a day, and electrolyzers need to be run 24 hours a day to produce hydrogen. What we're seeing in the natural gas market as well is the demand for natural gas is continuing to increase, and the price of natural gas, again, is continuing to increase as well. Gas used to be about $8 a gigajoule. The average price now is around $14.50 per gigajoule. So what we're seeing is a significant increase in the gas prices as well, which I'm sure you're all feeling in your pocket. So, geothermal. So we have 4 geothermal applications in. We have one in Long Reach, and then we have 3 in the Milungra Basin. And the government did a test around, an investigation around 8 years ago now into geothermal, and the Milungra Basin was the most highly prospective site for geothermal power. The reason that being is it's got a really hot rock bed system, and that's what you need. We're using closed loop technology, so we're not looking to use water. The conventional way of geothermal is you drill down, you go into a hot water aquifer, you bring water up to the top, it goes into a heat exchanger, you push a working fluid, turns into steam, and then you steam times the turbine, and you produce power. With closed loop, it's different. We don't need any hot water, what Australia doesn't have an abundance of in the right locations. So with hot water aquifer, we'll drill down into the basin, we'll push our working fluid down to the bottom of the well, it'll heat up there, comes up to the servers, goes into a heat exchanger, and as conventional, it produces steam, drives a turbine. We're well located in the Milungra Basin, Julia Creek, Lara Downs and Nancy. Julia Creek, the significant importance is you've got the high voltage copper string transmission line running straight through there. You've also got around $4 to $5 billion of mining projects all waiting to start in that area as well. So we're in an ideal location to produce 24/7 reliable power, and we'll be able to power local mine sites, and we'll also be able to connect into a new high voltage grid that the government are producing, which is going to cost them around $5 billion. So why Greenvale? So I think, as I've mentioned before now, we're going to be Australia's only end-to-end producer of bitumen binding products, which means it's fantastic for us because we'll have very little competition. At the moment, it's a bit of a monopoly of how the bitumen comes into the country. We'll be able to break that. And we think we're already talking to end users and customers, and they're very keen to start talking to us. Three-way play in the Amadeus Basin of the high-value helium, hydrogen, and natural gas speaks for itself. It's a fantastic opportunity to get in a really good market at the moment. And then we have our geothermal projects. As we enter into a renewable world, and we're looking for a reliable renewable energy source, geothermal is the answer. It's a lot better than solar farms and wind farms. So to me, it's a no-brainer. So thank you everyone listening to me today. I'm over in the booth next door. Please come over and talk to me. Thank you.